Imagine lying in a hospital bed, barely awake after a major operation, and seeing your partner walk in not with love, but with a plan to leave you penniless. My name is Thomas, and I discovered that the woman I spent 15 years with was only waiting for my heart to stop so she could start her new life. I have always been a guy who pays attention to details. That is probably why my small tax and accounting firm did so well over the years. I like numbers because numbers do not lie. People, on the other hand, lie all the time. My wife, Elena, was someone I thought I knew better than anyone else. We met in our late 20s, and back then, things were simple. We lived in a small apartment, ate cheap pasta, and talked about our future kids. We eventually had those kids, Leo and Mia, who are the light of my life. But as my business grew and the bank account got bigger, Elena started to change. It was not a sudden change, but a slow drift. She stopped asking how my day was and started asking how much the new contract was worth. She traded her old sedan for a luxury SUV and started spending more time at high-end spas than at home. I did not mind at first because I wanted her to be happy. I thought providing a good life was my job as a husband and a father. But about a year ago, the disrespect started to become obvious. She would roll her eyes when I talked about my work or my health. I had been feeling a sharp pain in my chest and side for months. When I mentioned it to her, she told me I was just being dramatic. She said I was getting old and needed to stop complaining. I went to the doctor alone and found out I needed a serious surgery to fix a heart valve and an intestinal issue. It was a major procedure, and the recovery was going to be long. The night before my surgery, Elena did not offer any comfort. She was busy packing a suitcase for a wellness retreat she said she had booked months ago. She told me she couldn't cancel it, and that I would be fine in the hands of the nurses. That was the first red flag that I actually allowed myself to see. I checked into the hospital on a Tuesday morning. The surgery was long, and there were some complications with the anesthesia. The doctor told me later that I was out for much longer than they expected. I spent 3 days in a fog, barely able to keep my eyes open. I saw the nurses coming in and out, checking my vitals and changing my 4 bags. I kept waiting for Elena to show up, but she never did. My mother came by, and my sister stayed with me for a few hours, but my wife was nowhere to be found. By the 4th day, I was finally sitting up and feeling a bit more like myself. The pain was still there, but the fog in my brain was starting to clear. That is when Elena finally walked into the room. She was dressed in a very expensive white suit, looking like she was going to a gala rather than a hospital. She did not have flowers, and she did not have the kids with her. She was carrying a thick manila envelope and a designer handbag. She did not even ask how I was feeling. She just walked over to the side of my bed and looked down at me with a cold smirk. "You look terrible, Thomas," she said, her voice devoid of any sympathy. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and scratchy from the breathing tube. I pointed to the water pitcher on the table. She ignored it and pulled a chair over, sitting down and crossing her legs. "The doctor said you might not wake up for a while," she whispered, leaning closer. "He said the complications were serious." She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of papers. I decided it was the perfect time to get some paperwork out of the way. She dropped the papers onto my lap. I looked down and saw the word, divorce, in bold letters at the top. "I'm leaving you, Thomas," she said, her tone almost bored. "This marriage has been dead for years, and I'm tired of being a house cat for a boring accountant. managed to find my voice, though it sounded like gravel. "The kids, where are the kids?" I asked. "They are with my mother," she replied. "They think I'm here taking care of you." She leaned in even closer, and I could smell her expensive perfume. "But here is the best part," she said, her eyes shining with a mean sort of joy. "Since you were so busy being unconscious, I've already moved the entire savings account." My heart rate monitor started to beep a little faster. "The doctor gave me a grim outlook the first night," she continued. "So I took the liberty of transferring all the funds to a private travel fund I set up in my name." She patted the envelope on my lap. "The house is already listed for sale, and I've got a first-class ticket to Europe tonight." "You can't do that," I wheezed. "Oh, I already did," she laughed. "The money is gone, Thomas. By the time you get out of this bed, I'll be on a beach in Italy, and you'll be broke and alone." She stood up and smoothed out her suit. "Sign the papers whenever you can," she said. "Or don't. It doesn't matter. The money is the only thing I really wanted, and I have it." For a moment, she looked like she had won. She thought she was leaving a broken man in a hospital bed with nothing. But Elena had forgotten one very important thing about me. I am an accountant who specializes in forensic tax auditing. I don't just use standard banking apps. I use professional-grade business software. Years ago, I linked all our joint accounts to my business tax software for real-time auditing. This software was designed to flag any transaction over $5,000 as a potential tax liability. It also had a built-in security feature that alerted my phone and my business partner immediately. The second she moved that money, my servers at the office had flagged it. And because I had set up a special fraud protection protocol with our bank, any large, unverified transfer automatically triggered. A hold. I reached over to the bedside table and grabbed my phone. My hand was shaking, but I managed to unlock the screen. Elena looked at me with a confused expression. "What are you doing? Calling your lawyer? He won't pick up this late." I didn't say anything. I just opened my notifications. There it was, a high-priority alert from my bank and my tax software. I tapped the screen and held it up so she could see it. The screen showed a large red box with the words, "Transaction blocked, fraud recovery initiated." The color started to drain from her face as she read the words. "What is that?" she asked, her voice losing its confidence. "It's my business software, Elena," I said, my voice getting stronger. "I linked our accounts years ago to track our tax deductions." I took a breath, feeling the stitches in my chest pull, but I didn't care. "The moment you moved that money, my bank's fraud unit flagged it as a suspicious transfer. I got a notification on my watch while I was in the recovery room. I didn't even have to call them. I just tapped unauthorized from my lock screen." Elena's eyes went wide, and she quickly pulled her own phone out of her bag. Her fingers were fumbling as she tried to open her banking app. She let out a small gasp when the screen flashed a permanent lockout message. "It says account restricted," she whispered. "Thomas, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything," I said. "You did. You tried to move over $400,000 in a single hour while I was in surgery. The bank sees that as grand larceny and money laundering." I leaned back against my pillows, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. "Every cent you touched is now evidence in a criminal investigation. I have already sent the logs to my lawyer and the local police department." Elena started to shake. "You can't do this." I'm your wife. It's our money. It was our money, I corrected her. Until you tried to steal it while I was dying. Now it's a crime scene. And about those divorce papers you brought me, I added, pointing to the bed. I think you should keep them. You're going to need a very good lawyer for your criminal trial. She began to pace the small hospital room, her expensive heels clicking on the linoleum. I was frustrated, Thomas. You never pay attention to me. So you decided to rob me and leave me for dead? I asked. That is a very interesting defense. I wonder how the judge will feel about it. She stopped pacing and looked at me, her eyes filling with tears that I knew were fake. Please, Thomas. Just call the bank. Tell them it was a mistake. We can talk about this. We can work it out for the kids. The mention of Leo and Mia made my blood boil. Don't you dare bring up the kids, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You were going to leave them with your mother while you ran off to Europe with their college funds. You didn't care about them an hour ago, and you don't care about them now. You only care that you got caught. Elena's face changed again. The fake tears vanished, replaced by a mask of pure rage. You think you're so smart, she screamed. You're just a pathetic little man in a bed. I'll tell the police you told me to move the money. I'll tell them it was your idea. I pointed to the corner of the room, near the ceiling. There is a security camera right there, Elena. And my phone has been recording this entire conversation since you walked in. I showed her the recording app, which was still running. Everything you said about the doctor saying I wouldn't wake up, about the travel fund, it's all recorded. She looked at the phone, then at the camera, and finally back at me. She knew she was finished. The smirk was gone. The white suit didn't look so sharp anymore. She looked like a small, desperate person who had finally run out of luck. Get out, I said. And don't bother going back to the house. I called my sister this morning. She's already there with a locksmith. Your things will be waiting for you at your mother's house in garbage bags. Elena opened her mouth to say something else, but no words came out. She turned around and practically ran out of the hospital room. I sat there for a long time after she left, listening to the steady beep of my heart monitor. The silence was heavy, but it was also peaceful. For years I had been living with a woman who didn't love me. I had been working myself to death to provide for someone who was just waiting for me to die. It was a painful realization, but it was also a relief. The next few weeks were a blur of recovery and legal battles. The bank's fraud department was very thorough. They kept the funds frozen for a while, making sure all the transfers were accounted for. Elena tried to hire a lawyer, but since she couldn't access the money, she had to rely on a public defender. The recordings I made were played in court during our first hearing. Hearing her own voice talking about how she hoped I wouldn't wake up was too much for even her family to defend. The judge was not sympathetic to her at all. Because I had proof of her intent to flee the country with joint assets, the court granted me full temporary custody of our children. The house sale she had tried to initiate was cancelled immediately. I moved back home 3 weeks later, with a nurse to help me for a while. The kids were confused at first, but I was honest with them in a way they could understand. I told them that Mom needed some time away to figure out her life. Eventually, they saw the truth for themselves when she didn't even call to check on them. She was too busy trying to stay out of jail for the larceny charges. In the end, she took a plea deal. She avoided prison time but lost everything in the divorce settlement. The judge ruled that her attempt to steal the funds constituted egregious behavior and awarded her almost nothing. She ended up living in a small studio apartment, working a retail job she hated. I, on the other hand, recovered fully. The surgery was a success, and without the stress of Elena's constant demands, my health improved rapidly. I started spending more time with Leo and Mia, taking them on the trips I used to just pay for others to enjoy. I learned that being a good father wasn't just about the bank balance. It was about being present, being respected, and being smart enough to protect what matters. I still work in taxes, and I still pay attention to the details. But now, I use those skills to build a life founded on trust rather than just numbers. I learned a very valuable lesson through all of this. You can never truly know what is in someone's heart until they think you have nothing left to give. True character is revealed in the moments when people think no one is watching. And sometimes, the best revenge is simply letting someone's own greed destroy them. I am a lucky man. Not because I have money, but because I have my life and my children. I realized that the quiet life I was living wasn't boring at all. It was exactly what I needed to see the truth. If you ever find yourself being underestimated, don't get angry. Stay quiet, pay attention to the details, and let them think they have won. The higher they think they have climbed, the harder they will fall when the truth comes out. My life is much quieter now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I have a new rule in my house and my business. Trust is earned, not given, and numbers are the second most important thing in life. The first is the people who stay by your side when the monitors are beeping and the lights are dim. Elena thought she was leaving me with nothing. In reality, she gave me back my freedom and a second chance at life. I hope she enjoys her trip to nowhere, because I am exactly where I want to be. If this story resonated with you, join our channel by liking and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.